Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked through the glass corridors of Nexus Prime. Her black shoes clicked against the crystal floor as she made her way to the High Council chamber. Outside the windows, 3 moons hung in the purple sky. Ships from 100 worlds moved between the orbital stations like glowing dots. Elena had been Earth's voice in the Galactic Consortium for 5 years. In that time, she had learned one important thing about galactic politics. Most alien species talked a lot, but did very little when problems arose. Today would be no different. The High Council chamber was a massive dome filled with floating platforms. Each platform held representatives from the major powers of the galaxy. The Altarian Collective sat on platforms of living metal. The crystalline hierarchy occupied structures that sang with harmonic frequencies. The Veltar Empire's delegation lounged on ornate chairs, made from rare woods from their conquered worlds. Elena took her place on the human platform. It was simple compared to the others. Just a desk, a chair, and the blue and white flag of United Earth. Chancellor Mortex of the Altarians called the session to order. His mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. We gather today to discuss the Keitharan situation. Elena had read the reports. The Keith were a peaceful trading species known throughout the galaxy for their kindness and fair deals. They had small colonies on 12 worlds. Their technology was limited, but they had something valuable. They knew the safest routes through dangerous parts of space. The problem was the hegemony of Vorth. These military fanatics wanted the Keitharan trade routes for themselves. Over the past 6 months, they had attacked and destroyed 8 Keitharan colonies. Millions of innocent Kyth had died. The situation is unfortunate, said Prime Minister Zaleth from the crystalline hierarchy. Her voice was like wind chimes. But the consortium cannot interfere in what the Vorth claim is a territorial dispute. Elena almost laughed. Territorial dispute. The Kyth had owned those worlds for 300 years. The Vorth had simply decided they wanted them. General Krixanal of the Veltar Empire leaned forward. The consortium has rules about intervention. We cannot act unless there is a direct threat to member worlds. More lies. Elena had seen this dance before. The major powers would express concern, make speeches about peace, and then do nothing. They would let the Keith die rather than risk their own comfort. What about the defense treaties? Asked Ambassador Chen from the Minor Species Coalition. The Kyth have agreements with several consortium members. Legal technicalities, replied Chancellor Mortex. Those treaties have escape clauses for situations involving major military powers. Elena listened to them talk in circles for 2 hours. They discussed economic impacts, legal precedents, and political complications. They never once mentioned the actual Kyth who were dying while they talked. Finally, Chancellor Mortex turned to her. Ambassador Vasquez, what is Earth's position on this matter? Elena stood up. The chamber fell silent. Humans were still new to galactic politics. Most species saw them as naive children who didn't understand how things really worked. We remember, Elena said, simply. The alien representatives looked confused. Chancellor Mortex's mechanical face tilted. We remember when the Kyth helped us establish our first trade routes 50 years ago. We had nothing to offer except raw materials and hope. The Kyth treated us fairly when no one else would. Elena's voice grew stronger. We remember Commander Thys personally leading the evacuation of our colony on Kepler 442b during the plasma storm crisis. She saved 18,000 human lives and asked for nothing in return. We remember Captain Fel Knox sharing his ship's food supplies with our stranded colonists on Proxima Station. We remember the Keitharan mechanics who worked for free to repair our damaged freighters. The chamber was completely quiet now. We remember every trade agreement honored in full, every promise kept, every act of kindness shown to humans when we were weak and had little to give. Elena touched a small device on her wrist. We remember every favor, council members. And we remember every betrayal. Prime Minister Zaleth made a sound like breaking crystal. Ambassador. Surely you cannot base foreign policy on sentiment. Can't we? Elena asked. You call it sentiment. We call it honor. She looked around the chamber at all the representatives who had just voted to abandon their allies. The Kythe are our friends. They proved their friendship through actions, not words. Now they need our help. Earth's resources are limited compared to the major powers, said General Cricksnall. What could humans possibly do against the hegemony of Vorth? Elena smiled. It was not a warm smile. We remember, General. We remember everything. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. Where are you going? Chancellor Mortex called after her. To make some calls, Elena replied without turning around. As she stepped into the corridor, Elena activated her neural implant. A soft blue light appeared in her vision as the connection opened. This is Ambassador Vasquez, she said quietly. Authorization code. Vasquez Alpha 7. Activate Protocol 7. Immediately. The ledger is now open. Across human space, dormant systems came to life. On Luna Station, massive quantum computers began processing data. On Mars, communication arrays turned toward distant stars. On Earth, the Department of Galactic Affairs activated its deepest protocols. The ledger was humanity's greatest secret. For 50 years, they had recorded every interaction with every species they encountered, every trade deal, every diplomatic meeting, every act of friendship or betrayal, every favor given and received, every promise made and broken. Other species kept records too, but not like this. The ledger was complete. It was accurate. And it remembered everything. Elena walked through Nexus Prime's corridors with purpose now. The major powers thought they could abandon the Keith without consequences. They thought humans were too weak and too new to matter. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In 3 days, the galaxy would see the true power of a species that never forgot a friend or forgave an enemy. The hegemony of Vorth would discover what happened when humans decided to collect on old debts. The reckoning was about to begin. 3 days after the High Council meeting, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Remembrance. Through the main view screen, she watched as quantum tunnels opened like flowers blooming in space. Ship after ship emerged from the swirling portals of light. Human vessels came first. Sleek destroyers with names like Justice and Loyalty. Massive carriers bearing the names of heroes and friends. Heavy cruisers, built for long campaigns. More ships than any alien species had seen humans deploy before. But they were not alone. The arthropod ships of the Zethkai followed. Their vessels looked like metal insects with wings of energy. The insect-like beings inside had sworn friendship to humanity 20 years ago. Next came the Resonant Fleet. Their crystal ships sang as they moved, filling space with harmonic frequencies that made human crews smile despite the approaching battle. The Wanderer nomad fleets appeared from multiple directions. Their mismatched ships had been rebuilt so many times that no two looked alike. But every one flew the blue banner of friendship alongside their own colors. Admiral Chen opened a communication channel to the hegemony fortress orbiting Kithara Prime. The main screen showed General Vextar, Supreme Commander of Vorth forces in this sector. His gray skin was covered in ritual scars that marked his victories. General Vextar, Admiral Chen said calmly, you are hereby ordered to withdraw all hegemony forces from Kitharan space immediately. The Vorth general's 4 eyes narrowed. Admiral Chen, the High Council has refused to intervene in our territorial expansion. Earth has no authority here. Earth claims no authority, Chen replied. We simply honor our debts. Vextar looked at his tactical displays, His officers were reporting the impossible. Hundreds of ships surrounded every hegemony position in the system. Most were from species the Vorth had never considered military threats. "This alliance is meaningless," Vextar snarled. "These are minor species with obsolete technology. The hegemony has conquered dozens of worlds." "Yes," Chen agreed. "You have conquered many worlds. But conquest and friendship are different things. You should learn the difference." Chen agreed Bassett. Chen agreed Bassett. "You should learn the difference." Chen agreed Bassett. "We have not people. We have conquered many." The first shots came from the hegemony. Fourth destroyers fired their plasma cannons at the nearest human ships. The humans responded not with overwhelming force, but with perfect coordination. As the battle began, Chen remembered how this alliance had been built. 15 years ago, the Zethkai homeworld had been struck by a plague. Their insect physiology made them vulnerable to a virus that other species could not even catch. The major powers had offered sympathy and promised to study the problem. Humans had done more than study. Dr. Lisa Park and her team had worked for 2 years without payment. They had lived on Zethkai colonies, sharing the risks their hosts faced. When they finally created a cure, they had asked for nothing except friendship. The resonant hierarchy had faced a different crisis. Solar flares from their star had disrupted the frequency patterns that kept their crystal cities stable. Their beautiful structures had begun to crack and fall. Human engineers had volunteered to help. They had learned to work with crystal technology, something no other species had bothered to understand. For 3 years, they had labored to stabilize the harmonic fields. When the work was done, the resonance had offered payment in rare crystals. The humans had asked only for continued friendship and communication. The Wanderer fleets had been trapped in a gravitational anomaly near the galactic core. Their ships, loaded with families and possessions from their nomadic lifestyle, had been pulled toward a collapsed star. The major powers had declared a rescue mission too dangerous and expensive. Humans had sent their best pilots and newest ships. At the memorial service for the lost crews, the Wanderer children had sung human songs learned from their rescuers. Now all these friends fought together against the hegemony. The battle was nothing like what the Vorth had expected. They had planned to fight individual species, one at a time. Instead, they faced a coordinated alliance that moved like a single organism. Zethkai fighters swarmed through hegemony formations like angry insects. Their small ships were hard to hit and struck at weak points in enemy armor. Resonant vessels provided electronic warfare support, their crystal arrays jamming Vorth communications and sensors. Wanderer ships attacked in unpredictable patterns, using maneuvers learned from centuries of dodging pirates and natural disasters. Human vessels coordinated everything, their commanders having studied every battle the hegemony had ever fought. On the planet below, Keitharan refugees watched through borrowed telescopes as the space battle raged. Elder Thys, the same commander who had saved humans decades ago, stood with her surviving people in a bombed-out city. "The humans came," whispered a young Kith beside her. "They actually came." "Act." Elder Thys wiped tears from her large, gentle eyes. "Of course they came. Humans remember their friends." The space battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the hegemony fleet was either destroyed or fleeing toward their own territory. General Vextar's flagship limped away with a human escort, carrying the message that Keitharan space was now under the protection of the Human Alliance. Admiral Chen opened a channel to Elder Thys on the planet's surface. "Cathara Prime is secure. Elder, your people are safe." "Admiral," Thys replied, her voice shaking with emotion, "we cannot repay this debt." "There is no debt," Chen said firmly. "There are only friends helping friends. Just as you helped us when we needed it." As the human fleet took positions around Keitharan worlds, news of the battle spread across the galaxy. Species that had ignored the crisis suddenly paid attention. The humans had not just won a military victory. They had proven something far more dangerous to the established order. They had proven that small acts of kindness could become great alliances. They had shown that friendship, not fear, could build the strongest bonds between species. Most importantly, they had demonstrated that humans kept their promises. When they said they remembered every favor, they meant it. Completely. In the High Council chamber on Nexus Prime, the major powers watched the reports with growing unease. They had assumed human gratitude was just pretty words. Now they realized it was something much more powerful. It was the foundation of a new kind of galactic politics, one where actions had consequences and debts were always paid. The age of abandoning allies for convenience was ending. The age of remembering had begun. Emperor Crixnal of the Veltar Empire stared at the reports spreading across his desk. Trade routes disrupted. Communication networks failing. Pirate attacks increasing. His empire's economy was cracking like glass under pressure. It had started small. A cargo ship here, a missed delivery there. His advisors had blamed bad luck and normal business problems. But the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. "Your Majesty," said Trade Minister Bel Nox, entering the imperial office with trembling hands. "The Nexarian Trading Consortium has cancelled our grain contracts. They say their ships keep getting attacked when carrying our goods." Crixnal's scaled hands clenched into fists. "How many ships this week?" 17 cargo vessels, sire. The pirates always seem to know exactly when and where valuable shipments are traveling. They ignore other traffic and target only our trade." The Emperor stood and walked to his window. Below, the capital city of Veltar Prime stretched to the horizon. Normally, the sky would be full of cargo ships bringing wealth from across the empire. Today, he could count the vessels on his claws. "What about our military escorts?" he asked. "The pirates vanish whenever our warships arrive," Bel Nox replied. "It's like they know our patrol schedules better than we do." Ender, the Regram the Reader Nox. Bel Nox replies. Crixnal remembered when his problems had begun. 3 weeks ago, human forces had defeated the hegemony of Vorth. Since then, everything had gone wrong for the Veltar Empire. It couldn't be coincidence. "Contact Admiral Chen Wei," the Emperor ordered. "Tell her I wish to meet privately." Admiral Chen Wei was the head of Human Intelligence Services. She was known throughout the galaxy as a woman who smiled often and spoke little. Those who underestimated her usually regretted it. The meeting took place on Neutral Station, a trading post in unclaimed space. Crixnal arrived with a small escort. Chen came alone. They met in a simple conference room with metal walls and basic furniture. Chen wore a plain blue uniform without decorations. She looked more like a clerk than the most dangerous intelligence officer in human space. "Your Majesty," Chen said politely, pouring tea from a human service set. "Thank you for coming." Crixnal studied her face for any sign of threat or mockery. He found neither. Chen simply seemed genuinely pleased to see him. "Admiral," he said carefully, "my empire is experiencing unusual difficulties. Trade disruptions. Communication problems. Increased piracy." "I'm sorry to hear that," Chen replied, offering him a cup of tea. "Economic troubles can be very stressful. These are not natural problems," Crixnal said, his voice growing harder. "Someone is targeting Veltar interests specifically. Someone with detailed knowledge of our operations." Chen sipped her tea thoughtfully. "That does sound troubling. Do you have any suspects?" The Emperor leaned forward. "Don't play games with me, Admiral. Is humanity behind my empire's problems?" Chen set down her teacup and looked directly into his eyes. Her expression remained friendly, but something cold flickered in her gaze. "Your Majesty," she said quietly, "humanity remembers every favor and every betrayal. Surely you know this by now." Crixnal felt his blood turn cold. He knew exactly what she was referring to. 20 years ago, The Veltar Empire had signed extensive agreements with Earth. Trade deals, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchanges. The humans had offered generous terms, asking only for friendship and honor. 3 years later, Human Colony 7 had been attacked by raiders. The colonists had sent desperate calls for help under the Mutual Defense Treaty. 30,000 men, women, and children had begged for rescue as raiders surrounded their world. The Veltar Empire had found legal excuses to avoid responding. Their lawyers had discovered technical clauses in the treaty language, loopholes that let them ignore their obligations without officially breaking the agreement. Colony 7 had been destroyed. Every human civilian had died, while the Veltar legal experts celebrated their clever interpretation of contract law. That was 20 years ago, Crixnall said weakly. It was a legal matter, not a betrayal. Chen's smile never wavered. But her eyes grew colder. Legal matter. Is that what you called it when you left 30,000 humans to die? She stood and walked to the room's single window. Outside, ships moved through space in peaceful patterns. Do you know what happened after Colony 7 fell? Chen asked. Crixnall shook his head. The High Council praised your empire for its pragmatic approach to interstellar politics. Other major powers congratulated your lawyers for their skill. Ender. Everyone agreed that sentiment should not override legal technicalities. Chen turned back to face him. Humans said nothing publicly. We attended the memorial services for our dead. We honored the treaty obligations you chose to ignore. We continued all diplomatic relations exactly as before. But we remembered. The Emperor's mouth felt dry. What do you want from me? Want? Chen seemed genuinely surprised by the question. She sat back down and poured fresh tea. You see, the Veltar Empire has made many enemies over the centuries. Conquered peoples who hate you. Trading partners, you've cheated. Allies you've abandoned when convenient. Chen's voice remained pleasant and conversational. The thing about enemies is that they often lack the resources for proper revenge. They can't coordinate their efforts. They don't have good intelligence about your operations. But we do. Crixnall understood with growing horror. You're sharing information with our enemies. We're sharing information with people you've wronged, Chen corrected gently. The mining collective you enslaved on Targus 4. The merchant families you bankrupted with unfair trade practices. The colony worlds you strip-mined and abandoned. All those people who couldn't fight back before suddenly have very good intelligence about Veltar shipping schedules, patrol routes, and cargo manifests. Isn't it wonderful how things work out? The Emperor stared at her in shock. You're destroying my empire through our own enemies. We're not destroying anything, Chen said. We're simply providing information. What people do with that information is their choice. She finished her tea and stood to leave. Your Majesty, humanity has a saying. What goes around, comes around. You chose to let humans die when you could have saved them. Now the universe is choosing to let your empire face the consequences of all your other choices. You could stop this, Crixnall said desperately. You could call off your information sharing. Chen paused at the door. We could. But why would we help someone who abandoned us when we needed help? The same legal principles you used to justify abandoning Colony 7 now apply to your situation. We have no treaty obligation to protect you from the consequences of your own actions. She smiled one final time. Humanity remembers every favor, Your Majesty. And we remember every betrayal. The price for betrayal is facing all your other victims without our protection. Chen left the Emperor sitting alone in the empty conference room. Within a month, 3 more Veltar colonies had declared independence. The Empire's economy had collapsed completely. Former allies and trading partners had abandoned all agreements with the Veltar, using the same legal technicalities the Empire had once used against others. The message spread throughout the galaxy. Betraying humanity had consequences far beyond losing human friendship. It meant facing justice for every other wrong choice an empire had ever made. And humanity remembered them all. News traveled fast through the galaxy. Within days, every diplomatic mission knew about the Veltar Empire's collapse. Trade networks buzzed with rumors about human involvement. Fear spread through the corridors of power on a dozen worlds. The major powers had always seen humans as newcomers who didn't understand galactic politics. Now, they realized, humans had been playing a much deeper game than anyone suspected. General Vex Tar of the hegemony of Vorth sat in his command bunker, studying reports from his remaining territories. The human alliance had pushed his forces back to their core worlds. Worse, rebellion was spreading through conquered populations. His aide, Colonel Zareth, entered with the latest intelligence reports. General, the humans have made contact with resistance groups on 17 occupied worlds. They're sharing tactical information and supply schedules. Vextar slammed his fist on the metal table. How do they know our supply schedules? Sir, they seem to know everything about our operations. Transport routes, garrison strengths, officer rotations. Some of this information should be impossible to obtain. The general realized the truth with growing dread. Humans hadn't just been building military alliances. They had been collecting intelligence for decades. Every diplomatic meeting, every trade negotiation, every cultural exchange had been an opportunity to learn. Desperate, Vex Tar decided to negotiate directly with Earth's leadership. If he could reach terms with the humans, perhaps he could save what remained of the hegemony. The human delegation agreed to meet on Luna Station, humanity's diplomatic headquarters in orbit around their home moon. Vex Tar arrived with his best diplomats and a briefcase full of generous offers. President Sarah Kim Okafor received the Vorth delegation in a conference room overlooking Earth. The blue and white planet hung in space like a peaceful jewel, showing no signs of the military power that had just defeated the hegemony. President Kim Okafor was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She looked like someone's grandmother, not the leader of a species that had just changed galactic politics forever. General Vextar, she said warmly, gesturing to comfortable chairs around a wooden table. Please, sit down. Can we offer you refreshment? Vextar was prepared for threats and ultimatums. The friendly welcome unsettled him more than any display of force. Madam President, he began carefully. The hegemony recognizes that our expansion into Ketheron space was a mistake. We are prepared to make significant territorial concessions to end this conflict. Territorial concessions, Kim Okafor repeated thoughtfully. You mean returning worlds that never belonged to you in the first place? We're also prepared to offer substantial trade advantages to Earth, Vextar continued. Exclusive mining rights on 12 resource worlds. Preferred status in all hegemony markets. Kim Okafor nodded politely. That's very generous, General. Tell me, what made you think we would be interested in profiting from your conquests? Vextar felt the conversation slipping away from him. Madam President, surely we can reach a reasonable agreement. The hegemony has resources that could benefit humanity greatly. Kim Okafor stood and walked to the window. Earth turned slowly below them, showing the lights of cities and the dark patterns of oceans. General, would you like to see something interesting? She asked. Before Vexitar could answer, the room's walls became transparent displays. Holographic images filled the space around them. Faces appeared everywhere. Men, women, children, elderly beings, all different species, all looking directly at the general. These are the Theknari family from Proxima 7, Kim Okafor said, pointing to a group of tall, blue-skinned beings. Your forces killed them when they refused to abandon their farm. More faces appeared. The Mercantile Guild of Altara Station. You executed their leadership for hiding refugees. The images kept coming. Hundreds of faces. Thousands. All staring at General Vextar. With dead eyes. The Children's Choir of New Harmony Colony. The medical staff of Epsilon General Hospital, the elderly care facility on Kepler Station. Vextar tried to look away, but the faces surrounded him completely. "Stop this," he whispered. "These are the people you killed, General," Kim Okafor said quietly. "Every name, every face, every life your hegemony destroyed, in its expansion across 47 worlds. We didn't just record your military actions," she continued. The holographic display showed documents now, medical records, personal letters, family photos, the complete lives of beings who had been reduced to casualty statistics. "Other species forgot these people," Kim Okafor said. "The galaxy moved on. But humans remember. We remember every single life you took." Vextar slumped in his chair. "What do you want from us?" "We want justice," the president replied simply. "Complete disarmament of all hegemony forces, full reparations to all affected species, and submission to a war crimes tribunal where every victim's name will be read aloud." "That would destroy the hegemony completely," Vextar protested. "Yes," Kim Okafor agreed. "It would. The same way you destroyed 47 worlds full of innocent people." She turned off the holographic display. The room returned to normal, showing only Earth spinning peacefully outside. "The choice is yours, General. Accept justice voluntarily, or we will broadcast these records to every world in the galaxy. Every species will see exactly what the hegemony has done. Every victim will be remembered. Your own people will learn the truth about their government's actions. How do you think they'll react when they see the faces of the children you killed?" Quote, Vextar understood that he had no real choice. The hegemony's power had been built on fear, and the galaxy's willingness to forget atrocities. Humans were taking away both foundations. "We accept," he said quietly. "Excellent," Kim Okafor replied, her grandmother's smile returning. "We'll announce the terms tomorrow." Quote, As the Vorth delegation left Luna Station, word of their complete surrender spread across the galaxy. The most powerful military force in known space had been defeated not by superior weapons, but by the weight of its own recorded history. In the days that followed, other aggressive empires began receiving similar visits from human diplomats. Each meeting included the same gift: complete records of their actions, preserved in perfect detail. The Altarian war machine found its own population learning about massacres their government had hidden. The crystalline hierarchy's client species discovered documentation of economic exploitation their masters had denied. Everywhere humans went, they brought memory. They brought the voices of victims who had been forgotten. They brought justice for crimes the galaxy had chosen to ignore. The age of consequence had begun, and humanity was its patient, implacable guardian. 1 year later, Elena Vasquez stood before the Assembly of Memory on Nexus Prime. The Great Chamber had been rebuilt since the old High Council's dissolution. Instead of floating platforms for major powers, there were simple desks arranged in circles. Every species, no matter how small, had an equal voice. The walls displayed a constant stream of information. Trade agreements honored. Peace treaties maintained. Acts of kindness between species. Acts of cruelty also. Recorded and remembered. The galaxy's memory was now visible to all. Elena wore the blue sash of her new position: Archivist General, Keeper of the Ledger. It was a role that hadn't existed a year ago. Now it was the most respected position in galactic politics. "Friends," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "We gather today to mark the first anniversary of the new order." Representatives from hundreds of species filled the assembly hall. Former enemies sat beside former victims. Major powers occupied the same modest desks as single-world governments. When humans first joined the galactic community, Elena continued, we were told that sentiment had no place in politics. That honor was a luxury civilized species could not afford. That memory was a weakness that prevented necessary compromises. Soft laughter rippled through the chamber. The old way of thinking seemed absurd now. We learned differently. We learned that memory is not weakness, but strength. That honor is not luxury, but necessity. That sentiment, properly applied, becomes justice. Elena gestured to the data streams on the walls. The ledger now contains 51 years of galactic history. Every interaction between species. Every promise made and kept or broken. Every act of kindness and every atrocity. This information belongs to everyone. No secret deals. No hidden crimes. No forgotten victims. She pointed to a section of the display showing trade statistics. The Zethkai have increased their trade volume by 300% since joining the Human Alliance. Not through conquest or exploitation, but through fair dealing and mutual benefit. Another section lit up. The former hegemony worlds have established a democratic federation. Their new constitution includes reparations funds for all species harmed by the old regime. More data appeared. 17 minor species have formed mutual defense pacts. They no longer fear being abandoned by major powers because they protect each other. Elena walked among the assembled representatives as she spoke. The old system worked through fear and forgetfulness. Species competed by making others afraid to oppose them. Crimes were ignored if the criminals were powerful enough. She stopped beside the Veltar delegation. Emperor Krixnal had been replaced by an elected council after his empire collapsed. The new Veltar Republic had spent the year making amends for past wrongs. The new system works through memory and accountability, Elena said. Species compete to be the most helpful, the most trustworthy, the most honorable. Because now, everyone remembers everything. Councillor Mortex of the former Altarian Collective raised a mechanical hand. His people had transitioned from conquering neighbors to trading with them. Archivist General, he said in his metallic voice. Some species worry that perfect memory makes forgiveness impossible. How do we move beyond past mistakes if they are never forgotten? Elena smiled. Counselor, there is a difference between remembering and dwelling. We remember past wrongs to prevent future ones. But we also remember when people change. She activated a new display section. The Altarian Collective has provided humanitarian aid to 6 species in the past year. All former enemies. We remember your past conquest, but we also record your current kindness. Memory serves justice, not revenge. When someone proves they have changed, that proof becomes part of their permanent record. Ambassador Chen from the Minor Species Coalition stood next. Archivist General, how do we ensure the ledger itself is not corrupted? Who watches the watchers? Archivist. Elena had expected this question. The ledger is maintained by teams from every major species. All entries require confirmation. From multiple sources. Any species can challenge any record through the verification process. More importantly, she added, humans remember that power corrupts. We have placed limits on our own authority. The Archivist General serves a 5-year term and cannot be re-elected. The Ledger's governing board includes species that were once our enemies. We remember that even good intentions can become harmful if left unchecked. Prime Minister Zaleth of the Resonant Democracy spoke next. Her crystalline voice chimed like wind bells. The old system valued strength above all. How do we prevent the strong from simply taking what they want? Elena pointed to another section of the display. Strength without honor has become worthless. The hegemony had the most powerful military in the galaxy. But they fell because no one trusted them. Under the new system, reputation is more valuable than weapons. Who would you rather trade with? A species known for keeping promises, or one known for breaking them? Who would you ally with? A people who help their friends, or those who abandon them? Strength still matters, Elena acknowledged. But strength combined with honor is far more powerful than strength alone. The session continued for hours. Representatives asked questions about trade disputes, territorial claims, and resource allocation. Every issue was resolved by consulting the ledger and applying consistent principles. Help those who help others. Remember those who remember you. Trust those who keep their word. Isolate those who break their promises. As the assembly concluded, Elena delivered her closing remarks. Friends, we have built something new in this galaxy. Not an empire based on fear or a confederation based on convenience. We have built a community based on memory. Every kind act is recorded and rewarded. Every betrayal is documented and punished. Every promise is remembered forever. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy. The assurance that nothing important will ever be forgotten. That good deeds will always matter. And evil ones will always have consequences. Some call this the age of accountability. Others call it the era of justice. I prefer a simpler name. The time of memory. -5. -5. We have the H of accounted. The time of memory. Elena looked around the chamber at representatives from hundreds of worlds. Former conquerors sat beside former victims, all working together under the watchful eye of perfect memory. We remember every favor, she said. And our retribution echoes across worlds. But retribution is not always punishment. Sometimes it is reward. Sometimes it is protection. Sometimes it is simply the promise that good actions will never be forgotten. The ledger remembers everything, and because it remembers, we can finally trust each other. As the assembly dispersed, beings from across the galaxy returned to their homeworlds carrying the same message. In a universe watched over by human memory, every choice mattered. Every action had consequences. Every promise would be kept or recorded as broken. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson humanity could teach. In the end, everyone remembers everything. And now, finally, that was enough to keep the peace.